Narrator, low dramatic. They threw him out like he was nothing. No respect, no mercy, no idea who they were dealing with. It happened in seconds. One shove, one cruel laugh, one door slamming in his face. The world behind that door sparkled with chandeliers, diamonds, and champagne, while outside, in the cold night, stood a man they thought they had broken. But they didn't know him. They only knew the actor, the face on posters, the name whispered in theaters. They didn't know the man who had walked through fire in real life, who had buried pain deeper than most could survive, who had rebuilt himself from ashes again and again. To them, he was disposable. Just another name to mock, another guest to discard. But to fate, he was something else entirely, because his silence was not weakness. His stillness was not defeat. His calm was the kind of calm that comes before a storm that no one inside that glittering hall was prepared to face. And when his next move came, it didn't just silence the room, it shook the very ground they stood on. Narrator, measured, cinematic. It was a private gala in Hollywood, where wealth and vanity dressed themselves in gold. Crystal chandeliers spilled light over velvet carpets, champagne flowed like rivers, and laughter echoed through a hall filled with men and women who believed themselves untouchable. And then there was Keanu Reeves, quiet, reserved, not in a tailored army of assistants, not surrounded by cameras or bodyguards. He came alone. No spectacle, no mask, just a man, attending a charity for children, battling illnesses. While others measured themselves by the shine of their cufflinks or the price of their gowns, Keanu measured the night differently. He spoke to waiters, remembered their names. He shook hands with janitors who worked in the shadows, invisible to the powerful. He bent low to smile at children sneaking past velvet ropes, slipping them autographs with a wink, as if they were the true guests of honor. To him, the night was never about prestige. It was about people, simple kindness, silent respect. But in that same kindness, others saw weakness. In his humility, they sensed an insult. To men whose pride was built on arrogance, his refusal to play their game made him dangerous. And so, as glasses clinked and laughter roared, whispers began. Smiles curled into smirks. Behind the glitter, a darker plan was already forming. What Keanu thought was a night of giving. For them, it was the perfect chance to destroy him. Narrator, low, tense. But not everyone saw Keanu Reeves with admiration. In the shadows of the gala, a group of Hollywood elites circled like wolves. Men with money, power, and fragile egos, the kind who measured worth not by character, but by the weight of their wallets. To them, Keanu's quiet humility wasn't grace. It was an insult. His presence without pretense, his ability to draw genuine smiles without trying, made their arrogance look paper-thin. And so their whispers began, short, venomous, spreading like cracks through glass. By the height of the night, when the music soared and the chandeliers glittered brightest, they struck. A hand, heavy with jeweled rings, clamped down on his shoulder. The room's laughter seemed to hush for a heartbeat. A voice, dripping with scorn, hissed in his ear, "You don't belong here. Wick, this isn't your world." The words carried more than insult, they carried intent. Within seconds, security moved, not as protectors, but as executioners of pride. Cameras lifted, ready to capture humiliation, dressed as justice. Keanu turned, calm, his eyes steady, but he wasn't given the chance to speak. A shove drove him backward, hard against the chest, sending him stumbling toward the golden doors. Gasps mixed with laughter. Flashbulbs exploded like lightning, and then silence. The doors closed with a thundering finality, leaving Keanu Reeves alone. Cast out into the cold night air, to them it was victory. A star stripped of dignity, discarded in front of the world. But what they didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. Narrator, somber, deliberate. The crowd laughed. Some clapped as if cruelty were entertainment. And all around, phones lifted into the air, recording, turning humiliation into content. In the glow of their screens, Keanu Reeves, one of the most beloved men alive, was reduced to a spectacle. Inside the gala, the elites raised their glasses in triumph. They believed they had stripped a man of dignity, broken his presence, silenced him in front of the very world that admired him. To them, it was victory, but outside, there was no collapse, no begging, no shouts of rage. Keanu stood perfectly still, the night air cold against his face. His eyes were steady, his breathing calm, like a warrior who had seen storms far greater than this. Slowly, he adjusted his jacket, a simple, almost ordinary gesture, yet in that silence it carried weight. He looked once at the golden doors, now closed to him as if sealing him out of their world, and then he did the unexpected. He did not storm off. He did not drive away. He did not vanish into the night. Instead, he turned. His steps were slow, deliberate, unhurried, and he walked, not toward his car, not toward his home, but somewhere none of them inside could have predicted. Every movement was calm, but behind that calm was something dangerous. Not anger, not vengeance, but purpose. The kind of purpose that doesn't need words, because it is written in silence. Narrator building tension. Minutes later, inside the glittering hall, the celebration swelled. The elites clinked glasses, laughter spilling over the music. They thought the night was theirs, a night where pride triumphed and humility was crushed under polished shoes. But then it happened. The chandeliers flickered. At first, just a tremor of light hardly noticed. Then, without warning, the entire hall was plunged into darkness. The music stuttered and died. Conversations choked into silence. The stage, once a pedestal for their vanity speeches, was swallowed in black. A cold hush swept the room, the kind of silence that carries fear in its shadow. And then, a single spotlight cut through the dark, a blade of light, sharp and merciless, striking the center of the stage. And there he stood, Keanu Reeves, calm, steady, unshaken. The same man they had thrown into the night now stood in the heart of their kingdom, untouchable. His shoulders were square, his gaze unwavering. He did not need to speak. His presence alone filled the hall with a weight heavier than any speech ever could. Security froze, eyes darting, hands trembling. No one saw him return. No doors opened. No footsteps heard. He was simply there, like a phantom, like the ghost of John Wick himself pulled from legend into flesh. Whispers spread like wildfire through the hall. How did he get back in? Who let him past? What is happening? But the man at the center did not move. He stood still, the spotlight painting him in white fire, while the rest of the room drowned in shadow. And in that silence, every person realized one thing. They hadn't thrown him out. They had summoned him in. Narrator deep resonant. The laughter died. Glasses froze midair. And in that thick, suffocating silence, his voice rose. Not loud, not angry, but steady, deliberate, every word landing like the strike of a hammer. "You can throw me out of your doors," he said, his tone calm but sharp as steel. "You can laugh at me, humiliate me, strip me of comfort. But there's one thing you'll never take." He paused. The silence stretched, gripping every soul in the hall. Respect. It is not given in rooms like this. It is not hidden in your money or your fame or your golden chandeliers. Respect is earned out there in the world by how you treat people who can do nothing for you. The words echoed, rolling through the hall like distant thunder. The smirks faded. The mocking eyes looked away. Even the clink of glass dared not break the moment. He stepped forward, the spotlight following him like fate itself. "Tonight, you've shown the world who you really are." His gaze swept across the elites, piercing. "And I've shown them who I will always be." The room didn't breathe. Phones stopped recording. For the first time that night, the powerful felt powerless, because in that instant it wasn't wealth or status that ruled the hall. It was truth, spoken with the calm of a man who had nothing to prove, and everything already earned. Narrator, calm, reverent. Then he stepped down. No anger, no vengeance. Just quiet dignity. The spotlight followed him for a heartbeat longer, then dimmed, as if even the light itself bowed to his presence. His footsteps echoed softly against the polished floor, each step measured, unhurried, carrying the weight of truth. The same guards who had dragged him out earlier stood frozen. Their hands twitched toward radios, but their eyes dropped. Not one dared to move. Not one dared to stop him. For in that moment, he was no longer a guest at their gala. He was something greater, untouchable. And then it happened. From the back of the hall, a single person rose to their feet. No clapping, no cheering, just silence, heavy and pure. Another rose, then another. And slowly, like a ripple spreading across water, the entire crowd stood, not in applause, not in performance, but in reverence. Eyes glistened. The same people who had laughed minutes before now stood as if in the presence of something holy. Because Keanu Reeves had reminded them of something this city, this industry, this world had long forgotten. Power fades. Fame fades, but respect lives forever. He did not look back as he walked toward the exit. No triumphant gestures, no final glance, just a man, leaving as quietly as he had come. And yet, his silence spoke louder than any standing ovation. Narrator, voice dropping to a whisper, ominous. But what none of them knew that night was that this insult wasn't random. The shove, the humiliation, the staged laughter, it was no accident. It was planned. Behind it all lurked a rival, a figure with deep pockets, a polished smile, and secrets darker than the velvet curtains of that hall. A man who had built his empire not on respect, but on fear, on silence, on buried truths. For months he had watched Keanu Reeves, not the movie star, but the man, a man who carried humility like armor, who spoke to janitors as equals, who donated without cameras rolling. And to this rival, that kindness was poison, because it reminded the world of a standard he could never live up to. So he struck the only way he knew how, by orchestrating humiliation, turning a night of charity into a spectacle of cruelty. He believed that breaking Keanu publicly would break him privately, but he had miscalculated, because Keanu's silence that night wasn't surrender. It was a spark that ignited whispers across Hollywood, whispers of corruption, whispers of a shadow war that had been brewing behind the golden walls of fame. And as Keanu walked out with dignity, his rival watched with unease. For in trying to bury a man, he had awakened something greater, a war, a reckoning, one that would change Hollywood forever.